To my dear Gabriel Utterson, when this falls into your hands, I shall have disappeared. Under which circumstances I do not possess the foresight to know. My instinct tells me that the end is certain and should be soon. I fear I have flown too close to the sun, and the fall is now inevitable. This strange case which I have made for myself will never relinquish its hold from me, and I fear it will consume me completely. It is likely that it already has. God knows I am careless. This is my true hour of death, and what is to follow concerns another than myself. My fate is entirely in his hands. We are somewhat entwined, and I fear that soon the end will come for the both of us. Remember me as I was, my friend, before I set forth on this dreaded decline. From your unworthy and unhappy friend, Henry Jekyll.
Right, last point of call, Dr. Henry Jekyll.
Present.
Now, Dr. Jekyll, I believe you have been researching into the human psyche?
Yes, sir. An expansion into theories behind antisocial behaviour and its causes.
Interesting. And what have your findings been?
I've been making promising progress. From my findings, I have reason to suspect that the frontal lobe of the brain has predominant control of the personality of the individual. As a consequence, I have reason to suspect that there could be a method one could utilise in order to block undesirable behaviours and, for want of a better word, purify the individual. As such, it is my request to you gentlemen to grant me further funding in order to try and continue to investigate.
Yes, it is an interesting project, Dr. Jekyll, but I believe it may not be our place.
But you see, I've got...
It is unwise to alter the vision of the Almighty. After all, were we not created in God's own image?
Oh yes, but
it is too open-ended. If we were to grant you the funding for your goal, we would be expected to do the same for other academics coming to us, and our budget cannot allow this.
You don't understand. I have come so far in my research.
Be that as it may, your focus is in the physiological psychology, an underappreciated area. We encourage you to adjust your considerable talents and look at a different goal within the same field, and hopefully have more success. It is unwise to go against the law of nature. Sure you understand. Good day, Jekyll.
Jekyll, may I speak with you briefly, in confidence?
By all means.
If you think you might have a chance at advancing your research, my advice would be to proceed. Ignore that grumpy old codger, but be sure you truly desire what it is you seek. To be able to suppress what we cannot accept. It's a severe action to take. Anyways, I shall leave you to it.
Thank you.
I suggest you potentially visit Carew, the MP. God knows he has plenty of money, and something this unorthodox might be right up his street. It's fair to say he's a little bit temperamental, could well appreciate the outcome of your work.
I appreciate that very much. Would I be right in saying that you yourself would be interested in my further experimentation?
In the past, I felt the same as you do now, but with time, man begins to view every aspect of the self with recognition, tolerance, and finally, gradually, acceptance.
I have spent long enough pondering.
Mr. Utterson, Dr. Jekyll is at the door.
Ah, fantastic. Send us straight in.
Evening, Utterson.
Evening, Jekyll. And how are we today?
Been better, been worse.
Seems a regular circumstance nowadays. May I interest you in joining me for dinner?
That'll be lovely. Thank you.
And how was your meeting this evening?
they rejected my funding claim. It's a pain, but life moves on. My work isn't going to be stopped by it.
And so it shouldn't. Blocking out, suppressing part of one's own personality. It's too fascinating a concept to abandon.
Well, I certainly think it has its uses. For the two of us, at least. The chap in the meeting, didn't catch his name, suggested the MP Carew is a potential revenue stream. Guess I need to keep it going for a little while longer. For now, at least, I think I have enough supplies to last me to the end of the month.
Well, it seems a rather fortunate recommendation. You know, there are rumors that Carew prefers the company of men. Probably unfounded, but in a position like his, well, I can understand why a man would like to exile such desires.
It's a shame.
What is?
That we are forced into this position when we never had a choice. I'm terribly sorry. It's unimportant. Right, better be going.
Ah, but Jekyll, what about dinner?
I'm afraid I've rather lost my appetite just had. Besides, there's a few more hours of daylight left. I can experiment a bit more.
Very well. Don't get over-obsessed with it, though. The hours you spend in that lab will be the death of you.
I don't think it'll come to that. Cool, I'll be missing dinner. I have a few more hours of work left to complete, and after that I suspect I'll be retiring to bed immediately.
Are you quite certain that is wise, sir? Is this not the exact work obsession that Mr. Utterson warned you against?
Don't trouble yourself, Paul. I know my own limits, I'll be fine.
Very well, sir. If that's all, shall I bid you a good night?
Yes, most definitely. Good night, Paul. Sweet dreams.
Sir.
Right, let's see what we've got. Diethyl azodicarboxylate. Yes, I want to avoid that one. Highly flammable. Smells nice, though. 3344 tetrachlorobiphenol. Yeah, that could work as an inhibitor. Ugh, this is useless. I've almost run out. I shall need more. May as well go and see Carew tomorrow and... Hang on. What's that? I don't remember using that one before. May as well try. Well then. Now the die is cast. So, see Carew see Carew tomorrow. God!
I am free. I feel strange. A sea of the most undignified desires washes over me. Pleasures which can only be described as unnatural. Unnatural, and yet, in these hands of mine, they could easily turn monstrous. The other one, the old man, oh, how he would wonder. How could a creature set forth to perform the grotesque acts for which he has kept caged so long within? a resident of the underworld has been unleashed onto an unsuspecting London so entirely focused on itself. It's fascinating. I feel the heartbeat beneath my fingers, as if it were to break the bones that make me. It's intense. It's invigorating. And yet, I feel incomplete. There is a space within me which needs to be filled, and means of filling it are delicious. Torture to another. Pain like they have never felt. It will feed me. So sadistic, it's beautiful. I lust for it. Whilst I'm here, Henry Jekyll is indisposed. In the ranks of mankind, pure evil is personified in only one. Edward Hyde.
Bastard! How dare you do that to my daughter, darling? Darling, are you okay? Help her up. Help her up, man. Get her to a hospital. How dare you do that to my daughter? You don't just get to damn near kill her and get away with it. Come here, you horrid creature!
Now, violence won't help solve more violence, now will it? All it will get you is a lawyer on your case. Trust me, no one wants that. No, it's a case of moral duty that I can't just let you get away with that. That girl could be severely injured. And that's going to be expensive. Now, I'm sure we'll all be in a much better position if you agree to give our friend here the money to cover the medical bills that he is now laden with as a result of your actions.
And why on earth would I do that?
Because we'll make it a scandal. I don't know who you think you are, sir. But I'll make sure that everyone from here to Ipswich knows your name by morning and associates it only with your despicable actions.
Very well. If you wish to make a capital of this incident, then a gentleman naturally wishes to avoid a scene. Name your figure.
200.
50.
150.
90.
100 and that's final, or I'll go to the press.
Fine. If that's what it takes, I shall retrieve it. This is my residence.
Don't worry, sir. We'll make sure your daughter is well looked after.
Thank you. Your generosity is most appreciated, miss.
There's £10 in this pouch. I've written a cheque for the remainder.
What? The name? Very well. I shall take it to the bank. But if it turns out to be forgery, the papers will be at your door, good sir.
I assure you, it is genuine. And if not, and you do decide to go through with your threat to accost the papers, then do try to get my name right. Edward Hyde. Good evening.
Come, my friend, we should cash this in. We may want to be wary, though. I can't for the life of me think why this man has given us a cheque in the name of Henry Jekyll, but I think I have a friend who may be able to help us.
Thank you.
Sir? Sir?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Sir, I was trying to get your attention. It would appear that you have a visitor.
Really? This hour? Strange, most gentlemen would be sound asleep by now, not waking up for a good few hours. So I wonder what Gabriel wants, eh?
Very clever of you, sir. Honestly, between yourself, Mr. Utterson and Miss Enfield, I don't believe I've ever seen closer friends. It's almost as if you're all the same person.
Don't leave Lanyon out of this. Good old Hasty. You know, it's an unfortunate side effect of having known each other for as long as we have. We begin to merge into one. As long as I can avoid gaining Enfield's eyesight and Lanyon's memory, I think I can live with the consequences of my actions.
Well, you know it's been getting up in years since we first met, sir.
Yes, I suppose it has. What do you make of it?
What do you mean, sir?
Well, you've been in mine, or at least my family's employ, for the better part of 3 decades now. Would I be right in assuming you rather enjoy it?
You'd be correct there, sir. Your family has made up a significant portion of my life. I served your grandfather for a brief time, and of course your father, until his passing last year. I know I resemble a pale comparison to him and his brilliant mind, but I have an incredible fondness for you, Henry. I've seen you grow into the good, strong man you are today, and I'm proud to call you my friend.
Friend? Is that how you feel we are?
I'd say so. I know that you're not familiar with the notion, but I'd say it's accurate.
Watch it, old man. Friend or not, I can still fire you. Ah, that'll be Gabriel now. How he takes so long to get up to this part of the house, I will never know. I suppose then, my friend, you had better go and let them in.
Right away, sir.
Oh, and Paul,
Yes, sir?
stop it with the sir. Just Henry will do nicely, since we're friends.
Of course, sir. I mean, Henry. My apologies. It's going to be quite something to get used to breaking the habit of 20-something years, sir.
Had you brought it up sooner, we could have made that change a long time ago. And on that subject, what is your given name, Paul? So we're on equal terms.
That, Henry, is for me to know and for you to never find out.
My dear Henry.
Ah, Gabriel! And Miss Rachel Enfield herself. My dears, you look in dreadful states. Would I be correct in assuming some whiskey might help that situation?
Well, whiskey improves every situation, so I certainly shan't refuse.
Neither shall I. Though I apologise for intruding at such an unsociable hour.
Oh, come now, Gabriel. You know me well enough to know I would never be asleep any time around now.
This is true. You never do heed my warnings about your obsession with your work. Regardless, Henry, we do come with a purpose.
I'd be rather disappointed if you didn't. Am I right in assuming you're returning from one of your walks?
You'd be correct. It's something that occurred during one of the walks that brings us to you. I usually feel very strongly about putting questions. It partakes too much of the style of the Day of Judgment. But this couldn't go undiscussed.
Well, I mean, that does sound ominous. Is it appropriate, Gabriel?
I'm afraid so, Jekyll. I have a fear, as your friend as well as your lawyer, that you may be in jeopardy of, at best, blackmail, and at worst, well, I dread to think.
How exciting. How so?
Well, I know that you and Hyde have an agreement of sorts. I noted in your will that in the case of your death, or as you stated, a disappearance exceeding that of 6 months, that all of your assets would fall into the hands of Edward Hyde, and he would essentially step into your shoes entirely. I had let it go for the meantime. But after Rachel had told me about what she had seen, the most horrific incident of which...
New business partner. He sought me out and offered to help with my experiments. Chap seemed awfully interested in the personalities present, especially. Keeps himself to himself, mind you, so I can't really tell you much beyond the boring academic information.
Be that as it may, he may be using you. After the incident with the girl, he emerged with a cheque written in your name to pay off a brutal act of which he performed. Be honest with us. Did he blackmail you for it?
Don't worry. We can help you out of the situation. Henry, you know we would do anything for you. But you need to be completely candid with us. We need to know what we're dealing with.
My friends, my dear, dear friends. I truly appreciate your concern and your action. I really do, but please put your good hearts at rest. I'm afraid you have entirely got the wrong end of the stick. I am not being blackmailed about that, and I'm being quite candid. Mr. Hyde is not a man of extraordinary wealth, and so I agreed to share some of my ample funds with him. The inheritance from my late father would do far better furthering the life of someone who would actually use it, because Lord knows I'm a man of simple pleasures. Not a great deal left, mind you, so I ensure I don't use it in my experiments, but Mr. Hyde has not been claiming anywhere near what I've allowed him to.
I'm sorry, but this doesn't make sense. How did he get the check from you so quickly?
You'll berate me, I'm sure. But I've given him a limited checkbook. Only a couple of pages, but all filled in except for recipient, date, and sum of money. I trust him not to abuse it, and thus far in our partnership, he has not.
And how long has this partnership been, exactly?
And why do you need his help regardless? He's not a medical doctor. What can he offer that you yourself can't?
He gives me an alternate perspective, and has done so for the last few weeks. I really feel that with his help, my experimentations are getting somewhere. And yes, I agree, the incident with the girl in the doorway was unfortunate, but it was a simple accident, nothing more than that.
I'll be brutally honest with you. From the moment I laid eyes upon him, I felt the most primal feelings of hatred towards Mr. Edward Hyde.
Now, Enfield, I'm disappointed in you. In this house, we don't approve of such preconceptions of individuals. It's not fair. People are more than merely what they look like.
Very well. But Henry, the moment anything about him bothers you, even the tiniest amount, then you should come to myself or Rachel for help. We are always going to be here for you. Always have been, always will be.
I shall bear that in mind. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some work to get on with.
I will continue to keep my own eye on Mr. Hyde in the meantime. After all, if he be Mr. Hyde, then I suppose I shall be Mr. Seek.
Utterson, what the bloody hell are you on about?
It sounded better in my head. Good night.
Good night, Jekyll.
Good night. Thank you. But I can look after myself.
Bloody useless council. How in God's name am I meant to get any of this done unless they provide the necessary support? The trains will continue to run out of time unless they get their act together. Oh well, as is life. Enter.
Sir Danvers, apologies for the intrusion. It is good to see you again.
Good grief. Isn't Dr. Henry Jekyll in there? How are you, my dear man?
Not too bad at all, good sir. How have you been keeping?
To be truthful, Jekyll, I've been better. With the election coming up, with the council on my heels about changes to the railway system, and the cabinet slowly crumbling to dust, I have an excessive amount on my plate, but as is life.
Yes, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Now, I can't say that being a member of Parliament has ever particularly stood out to me as a career I could make a success out of.
No, indeed, but it does have its moments of joy. But for every one of those, there's about 50 that counts to it. Anyway, I presume there's a reason for your visit.
That there is, sir. Are you familiar with my most recent research?
Very acutely. Something to do with personality disorders.
Yes, that's the one. I'm experimenting with the ability of the human body and psyche to repress certain negative emotions when treated with the correct chemicals.
Yes, interesting. But Doctor, why are you coming to me?
Well, sir, that's the thing. My research is showing some very early signs of promise, but it's having some unintended consequences. The university is not keen for me to continue my research, and so I'm in need of a sponsor. I was rather hoping you might be interested in filling that role for me.
I am flattered, Doctor, but I am befuddled as to why you think I'm the man for the job.
Well, sir, and I mean no offence by this, none whatsoever, but there is talk, sir. There are rumours, incessant rumours, about certain aspects of your private life.
Rumours? What rumours?
That you have no intention to marry. That you prefer the company of gentlemen, to put it subtly.
I've no idea what you're talking about. How preposterous.
Danvers, You know me. You can trust me.
Very well. Yes, I might be what one may call a sodomite, queer, homosexual, whatever term you prefer. What does it matter?
Sir, don't you see that I'm offering you the chance to aid in research that will allow you to repress this, to hide, nay, remove it from your body, and cast yourself in a new image of regularity and of purity. Set aside these rumours for good.
These rumours will plague me regardless. But am I correct in assuming that you are of the same persuasion?
Yes.
I suspected as much. Henry, why do you pursue this? I understand you want to rid yourself of how you truly feel, but why do you need to?
Look at the world around us, Danvers. We aren't welcome here. Every day, at risk of exposure, at risk of losing our livelihoods, our homes, our loved ones, of some pitiful emotion. And what for? When I am this close to holding so much control over the human body.
Because that is the part that makes you, you. Dr. Henry Jekyll, great scientist, but even greater man. You are that great part of man with that part of you within. Do you think you're any better without it?
Yes!
Oh, Henry. I am truly sorry that you've been pushed into this position. That you're in such a state where you're driven to hiding yourself. Your motives are your own. But turning your back on everything you held dear, how can you?
Danvers, it is awful! Every day, waking up, hiding from the world, it forces me into submission. And I can feel it in my heart, in my lungs, the endless fear of being found out. The fact that I can look into a man's face and simultaneously feel a sense of satisfaction and the most dreadful guilt I have ever felt. I can't do it anymore. I am more than just that part of me, and the world will be a kinder place for me without it. The tightening around my heart, it hurts, Danvers! What would I prefer? Living a lie or forging my own truth? The latter wins every time. No matter how it must be done. And if the world is to be believed, then the hell I will put my body through in the process is no worse than the hell my soul will go to if I fail. I need this. I need the purification. I've lived my life watching, looking at people's faces as they grow to suspect. My butler Paul, I suspect he knows. He would never dare say anything, he's far too polite for that, but I've seen the look on his face. Disappointment. Hell, I'm pretty familiar with that facial expression from my dear late father. He definitely knew. Every time he looked at me, it was as if he longed to be looking at someone else. that the boy he raised couldn't possibly have grown up to be the way I am. Well, I can make that someone else now, can't I? I can forge the man my father always wanted me to be. Don't you understand?
I am truly sorry. I am sure the university will be against your project for it being ungodly. They and I may not agree on very many things, but we agree on this. It is God-given, and that part of me will not leave my body until it leaves with my last dying breath. You can mutilate your body and your soul if you truly wish. Let the tears and blood be on your hands. But I will not endorse or sponsor the behaviour you are seeking. Find yourself, Jekyll, or you will become your work and nothing more. And you are better than that. So much better.
Why does no one understand? I need to do this. It's not a choice. It's the way it has to be. Why can't Danvers see? Don't worry. We'll sort it out. I think it might be time for me to take the reins.
Good Lord, it's a bloody miserable day, isn't it, gentlemen?
I wouldn't say that's the half of it, miss. It's like London itself is falling down.
Can't exactly say I'm shocked. Bloody council aren't exactly doing anything to help the situation. You know, Jekyll had a meeting with Carew a good few months back, and he was apparently going on about the railway system or something like that.
Danvers is obsessive about those bloody things. The more we get of them, the more he loves them.
Well, you've got to admit, they certainly are an interesting invention.
Okay, I will give you that one.
Anyway, my dears, shall we wander?
Good-o.
You know, speaking of Henry, has anyone actually heard from the mysterious Mr. Jekyll in the past few days?
I personally haven't.
I've not seen him since we last went to him regarding his new business partner. I'm inclined to say that the rejection of his funding from the university has left him in a sombre state. I feel bad for him, the poor fellow, but I suppose for now the best we can do is leave him to his own devices.
True, he's a recluse, but he isn't stupid. If he needs us, he'll ask.
Yes, his business partner. And what would the two of you make of Mr. Edward Hyde?
He's certainly an interesting sort of fellow. Can't say he's the kind of person I'd be inclined to spend too much time with if I could avoid it.
Yes, quite. I tend to agree. Still, Henry seems to be under the impression that he's useful, so I suppose that at least counts for something.
You know, you two are the worst people at any form of subtlety. I'm yet to meet Edward, but I'm sure it will occur eventually.
I'm in the same boat, Hasty. I believe only Rachel has actually met Mr. Hyde, and that encounter was discourteous and unpleasant, to say the least.
You underplay that event greatly. The incident with the girl was ghastly. And the way he treated her father? I've never seen anything like that.
Interesting. Oh, morbid, but interesting. I suppose he's a fellow who likes to stick to the shadows. Speaking of, have you two heard the most recent rumour on the mill?
I can't say that I have.
I may have. Is this about the Ripper?
That's the one. There's been a string of murders, particularly brutal, so I've heard, and it's as if the culprit is killing out of pleasure.
Oh my.
Pleasure. From murder. I don't believe that. I'm sure the authorities are merely missing something that ties it all together. Still, poor sods, God rest their souls.
Yes, indeed. Murders left, right and centre. It's horrible. Too much blood for me, though. I'll keep to my chemistry rather than biology, thank you very much.
Well, there may be one linking factor that goes against you both.
Yes, and what's that?
Well, only rumour, of course, and the grapevine is especially unreliable nowadays. But I've heard that the majority of the victims are what you might call ladies and gentlemen of the night.
You mean prostitutes?
Yes, well, that's certainly one way of putting it. Blunt as ever, Utterson.
Sexual desire striving to murder. You could write a book about it.
It'd be an especially dark book.
That's true. There are certainly enough of those floating about anyway. Still, it is concerning. Some may say that their profession, if you can call it that, invites this sort of behaviour. They thrive on drawing out the hidden aspects of mankind which are better kept concealed beneath. All the same, no one deserves a fate like that. Lanyon, are you all right? You're awfully quiet.
Yes, apologies. Sorry, Enfield reminded me that there's more I'd heard. I had heard about the prostitutes, but there's also a child dead and another injured.
What? That's horrific. Who could do something like that to a child? I only hope the injured one recovers sufficiently. Goodness me, is that the time? Gabriel, I think we have some papers that need to be looked at before the hour is up. We should really be heading back, shouldn't we?
Yes, most definitely. Apologies, Lanyon. You know how these things go, needs must and so on.
No, of course not. I'd better get back myself. Anyway, Miss Enfield. Utterson?
Gabriel, a child injured and all of this occurring so recently. You don't suppose there's any chance we know the culprit? Someone who could commit such an act of brutality to someone so young?
What, and you really think that Hyde could be behind it? Now, I don't like him either, but it's quite a stretch to accuse him of murder. Besides, Jekyll may be in a dark place, but even he wouldn't associate himself with someone like that.
That's assuming he knows about
Oh,
it.
enough, Rachel! Your fantasies are bleeding into reality yet again. Get a hold of yourself. How dare you accuse Henry Jekyll of harbouring a murderer? Now, given that you've spoiled our walk, how about we retire for dinner? And from the looks of it, a drink to calm your nerves.
Very well. I suppose that wouldn't be a bad suggestion. You know I never turn down a drink.
Hey, you ought to be mindful. Out alone at night. Thieves around, they reckon. Or, something worse. I've heard there's a new crook about. More animal than man, they say. I heard that the last 2 bodies on the street, at least, were because of him. Folks are saying that some lass fell down dead just at the sight of him. Well, you know how it is, folks exaggerate, but, still, it's not safe outside. Especially for the likes of us. Why don't you, come inside, where it's safer?
It's you. The dreaded nocturnal wanderer. Who let you in? How did you get my address? I demand to know, sir. Ah! Get your filthy hands off me!
The tears and the blood.
I beg your pardon.
Tears and blood are what's on my hands, Danvers. The satisfaction without the guilt. You should try it. The sweetness of sin. I am man in its purest form. I am not mutilated. I am free.
Ah! Ah!
What have you done?
Don't worry. It's been sorted. It's nothing we can't handle. Now, how you feeling, my friend?
Don't you dare call me your friend.
I suppose no two friends have ever been the same. Quite as close, am I right?
Bastard.
Well, that's not very polite. Now, you listen here, Jekyll. We've got to share this body, for now at the very least. And while we do, you're going to listen to me. This is my body, not ours.
Your body. Last I checked, the name known about the streets was one Henry Jekyll, not Edward Hyde!
Potentially, my friend, potentially. But times change, and it won't be long until it's my name that's infamous.
How on earth do you intend to do that?
With power, with influence of perhaps indelicate nature. But you've got to learn, Jekyll. If you want something, then you've got to take it. Don't wait for it to be handed to you on a silver platter. But I think you know this. After all, you didn't wait to be granted your experiment, and here I am.
I did what I thought was right. A decision I am increasingly regretting.
Don't worry. You won't regret for long. After I'm in your ear, you'll say things a lot more like me.
Even when I'm in control, eh?
Even then. I will always be the voice in the back of your head, the shadow beneath your foot, that little glimmer in the corner of your eye that you can't quite catch. But it's there. It's always there, lurking, and it sees everything that you ever do, influencing it all.
Damn you, Hyde. Take your evil deeds and rot in hell!
I'll see you there, Jekyll.
Constable Grayson here to see you, sir.
My goodness, to what do I owe the pleasure?
I regret to inform you, sir, that there has been another incident. At around 2 a.m. this morning, we received news of an attack down Ashby Street. There isn't necessarily an easy way to put this, sir. Sir Danvers Carew has been murdered.
My God.
There is evidence that the murderer had attempted to set fire to the building, but it didn't manage to spread. There was nothing found on the victim's person except an envelope, stamped and sealed. And it bore the name and address of you, Mr. Utterson. Oh, and another thing. The body itself was incredibly mangled, but we did manage to find the weapon with which the deed had been done.
Henry?
Sir?
This was a gift to my friend Henry Jekyll.
The doctor?
The very same.
Well, perhaps he was involved
No!
in some...
Not Henry.
Right. Well, I shall be investigating further, nonetheless, if that's all the same to you, Mr. Utterson.
Very well. I shall accompany you.
I'm not sure that's
I
very wise.
appreciate your apprehension. But like it or not, he is not only my friend, but my client as well. He has a right for me to be there.
Very well. On we go.
Ah, Poole, thank goodness. May we come in? I'm afraid it's a matter of urgency.
Gentlemen, of course.
My dear man.
Dr. Jekyll, are you aware of the events of last night?
They were crying it in the square. I heard them from the dining room.
And what was it that they were crying, sir?
The Carew is dead. Poor Carew. I saw him only the other night, such a wonderful, sweet man.
Yes, quite. I'm terribly sorry, sir, but we do have reason to believe that you may be involved in some way. You see, this was found at the scene of the crime. Am I correct in saying that it belongs to you?
You would be correct in saying it belonged to me. It no longer does, though. And not merely just through the existence of it on your person.
What do you mean, Henry?
As it was a gift to me, it was a gift to another. I handed it off to my associate, Edward Hyde, merely a week or so ago. It's quite true. You can ask Paul for its confirmation. Or even the gentleman who took it from my residence and into the temporary ownership of the postal service. It's not mine!
Very well. Kane makes little in the way of evidence anyway. But I shall be investigating further, and for what it's worth, Jekyll, I believe you very little. Good evening.
Henry. What am I to believe?
What is it that your heart tells you?
That you, while innocent in yourself, have committed a horrible sin in the trust of a close friend.
And by that you mean the wonderful Edward Hyde.
Hyde, yes, wonderful! I think that fact may presently be in doubt.
Yes, well, quite.
Look, Carew was my client, but so are you. Please, tell me that you have not been foolish enough to hide this fellow.
Utterson, I swear to God, I am completely done with him while I remain in this world. I bind my honour to you that I will never set eyes on his smirking face again. This whole matter is done with. You do not know him as I do. He is safe. He is quite safe. He will never be heard from again.
Very well. You seem quite sure of him. And for your sake, I hope you're right. If it were to come to trial, your name would appear.
I'm quite sure of him. He and I, we have an understanding.
All right. As long as you're certain.
I am. But Utterson, there was another matter which I wish for you to advise me on.
Oh?
I have received a letter. I am at a loss as to whether I should show it to the police. I should like to leave it in your hands. You'll judge it wisely, I'm sure. I have so great a trust in you.
And you fear that this will lead the police to him?
No. No, I cannot say I particularly care what becomes of Hyde. I'm completely done with him. No, it was more my own character which I was concerned for, which this hateful business has rather exposed.
Right. Well, this does shed some light on the situation. Henry, I'm sorry that I suspected you for even so brief a time.
Do not concern yourself, my friend. I've lost faith in even myself.
Have you the envelope?
I'm afraid not. There was no postmark. It must have been directly handed in.
I see. Then shall I keep this? Right. I will have it appraised. Henry, one last thing. Was it Hyde who dictated the terms in your will regarding your disappearance? I knew it. He meant to murder you, Henry. You have had a fine escape.
I'm afraid I have received something far more to the point. I have received a lesson. Oh God, what a lesson I've had.
Get some rest, Henry. Please.
Are you sure there was nothing else on that letter?
Quite sure. Jekyll said that it had been hand-delivered in personally. But the funny thing is that when I asked Poole, he said that there had been nothing in the post that day.
How peculiar.
Indeed.
Could it have been written within the lab itself? We know Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are close. Business partners, as he says, or something alike. What if upon a visit, Hyde wrote the letter and left it for Jekyll to find? I shudder at the thought of that man in the residence of our dear friend. But after the recent revelation of their supposed contract, and as you say, Hyde influencing the changes to Jekyll's will, as well as the incident with the cheque, I truly believe that Hyde is blackmailing Jekyll. Upon what matter I dread to think.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I'm sure that the murder of Carew was meant to be a message to Jekyll, that it could easily be him next.
Yes, I thought the same. I knew Jekyll was wrong to trust that man. If you could even call him that.
So sorry to have kept you waiting.
Ah, not at all. Mr. Guest, may I introduce my cousin, Miss Enfield? Miss Enfield, Mr. Guest has worked with me on many a legal case.
Oh, how do you do?
Pleasure's all mine.
Guest has studied handwriting for years. A great asset to the police force, you can imagine. I apologise for calling you here on such short notice, but rest assured I have my reason. Regarding the business of Sir Danvers Carew?
Yes. Dreadful. Dreadful. I heard the man who did it was quite mad.
I should quite like to hear your thoughts on that. I have with me here a document in his handwriting. A ghastly business altogether, but here it is. The murderer's signature.
And I say, what's that?
That would be an old dinner invitation from Henry Jekyll.
Thought I could recognise the writing. Is it private? May I see it?
Of course.
So you see, Edward Hyde is not mad, but he does write with an odd hand.
And by all means, an odd writer.
Why do you compare them, Guest?
Dr. Jekyll has a very singular autograph, very interesting. The hands of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are identical, just differently sloped. It's as if they were written by the same author.
How odd.
Yes. How you say, how odd.
I wouldn't mention this note, Guest. Not to anyone.
No, of course not. I think I should take my leave.
Yes, Mr. Guest, thank you. You've been of great help.
Good night.
Gabriel.
I don't believe it. Henry Jekyll forged for a murderer. No, I've had it!
What are you doing, Jekyll?
I've had enough! Enough of you and your persistent meddling, your endless intrusions into my life! My life! Well, it ends now.
You're a fool, Jekyll. I'm not going anywhere, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Nothing I can do, eh? What about this?
What the hell do you think you're doing? You need me!
Need you!
Yes, Henry, yes! I purify you! All your sin's in me, and it makes you a better man!
Rubbish! There is more sin in you than there ever was in me. You're too dangerous, you can't be controlled, you kill! And I can stop that, I can repress it!
Think, Jekyll, think. Your life has been easier since I arrived. All your horrible little thoughts are confined to me. You can work on your work more easily. You sure you want to do this?